It is 6:54 a.m. in Starbase, Texas, a gorgeous sunrise, and Starship is targeting liftoff in just 30 minutes and 18 seconds from now at 7:25 a.m. Central Time. As you can see, it is a beautiful day in South Texas for the fifth flight test of Starship. Good morning, Star people. I'm Kate Tice.
And I'm Jesse Anderson, and we are joining you live from SpaceX Hawthorne with a big crowd here this morning. It's been roughly 4 months since our last Starship flight, and we've got a big morning ahead of us.
Flight 5, has a few primary objectives and one big first. We may be attempting to catch the Super Heavy booster. The teams at Starbase have been hard at work around the clock upgrading hardware across the entire tower with focus on the chopsticks, the two mechanical arms that will reach out and catch the returning booster. We're only going to attempt the catch if everything on the booster and tower checks out after launch, but either way, excitement is definitely guaranteed.
Definitely. Today's Starship features a completely reworked heat shield with stronger tiles and a secondary layer, which is an extra layer of protection for the ship that will protect from any of the that will help protect if there's any missing or damaged tiles. Now, not only did we replace the entire heat shield with our newest generation of stronger tiles for today's flight, we'll also be flying a handful of aluminum tiles that are there to help the team understand the thermodynamic environment during reentry. If you were with us for Flight 4, you'll know how hard those heat shield tiles worked during the ship's reentry.
Did they ever? As you can see there, they worked incredibly hard. This big heat shield rework that we're talking about promises to increase the likelihood of Starship being better protected during controlled reentry as it heads towards its flip maneuver and landing burn for a soft splashdown on target in the Indian Ocean, just like we did in Flight 4. And we'll have to wait and see. Keep your fingers crossed, but we may have some new views in store for you today as well.
Right, like all test flights, we want to learn as much as possible, and views of Starship during all phases of flight help us to keep improving the vehicle for recovery and reuse.
Now, thinking forward to when Starship is flying regularly, it will take the heaviest payloads to space, land humans on the moon again after more than half a century, and ultimately fly people further into space than ever before. And getting there will require us to rapidly iterate and fly often, which is why we're working so hard to scale operations at Starbase.
Yeah, the faster that we learn now, the faster we can improve and evolve Starship to achieve reliable flights. We've been designing this vehicle from day one to realize a vision of having an entire city of people on Mars, something we know will take launching millions of pounds of cargo and equipment into space spread across thousands of flights. This future will require many Starships that can fly again and again, and today's flight is a critical step on that path.
So buckle up your seatbelts because here we go. The moon and Mars are not nearly as far in the future as you may think. In fact, we're planning to send Starships to Mars as soon as 2026.
You might be familiar with the Starlink logo, and there you can see it on your screen. It's an iconic representation of the Mars Transfer Orbit, also called the Home and Transfer Orbit. This is how fundamental Mars is to SpaceX. This transfer window, or a time when the Earth and Mars are the closest to each other, opens every 26 months and is only open for about 2 to 3 months at a time for a vehicle with Starship's power. And it just so happens that the next Mars transfer window opens in 2 years towards the end of 2026.
Yeah, lining up a launch to Mars is similar to how we launched to the International Space Station, where we time launches to match the station's orbit. If we didn't do this, we'd need more propellant and more time to get there.
Exactly. So the first opportunity that we have to fly Starships to Mars, we plan on doing it. These first flights to Mars will be uncrewed and will test the reliability of landing intact. If those landings go well, the first crewed flights will follow soon after.
So it's safe to say it's all happening, and flights like today's are what's going to get us there. Not only have we made several improvements to the Starship flying today based on what we've learned from our last flight, including extensive upgrades to Starship's hardware and software, we've also made improvements to the launch tower and catch mechanisms.
And if you've noticed in some of the live views this morning, our teams have completed stacking the second launch tower, which will be coming online next year. Having two operational launch towers paired with ships and boosters rolling off the line in our new Star Factory will allow us to increase our flight cadence and test even more rapidly. And just a few miles away from the two towers, things are moving really fast at the heart of Starbase. Star Factory is rapidly coming online, with production teams already using the space as construction continues. The 1 million square foot Star Factory brings many parts of the manufacturing process under one roof for the first time, enabling moving as much system integration work as possible earlier in the build process, with the goal of eventually producing hundreds of Starships a year.
That's crazy. It's such an impressive building. So, for example, teams can assemble an entire nose cone structure of a ship into a single piece and work on its internal systems all in one place. So, if you're working on Starship and you have a question about the steps that you're working that happen before or after yours, instead of having to leave the building and go and find the person or the team with the answer or waste time sending an email and waiting for their response, odds are you're right next to that person or team. And now you're working right alongside them, so you don't have to wait for a response.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it a lot more efficient and faster to communicate. So not only are we rapidly iterating on these spacecraft themselves, but we're also innovating the way that they're made.
It's almost too much to keep up with.
We're also posting updates on our account on X if you can't keep up. That'll help you. So if you don't already, make sure that you follow us at SpaceX on X. And I have a feeling it's going to get pretty busy.
Oh, that is definitely an understatement.
And it's definitely going to be very exciting today. So with that, let's meet today's Starship on the pad. Starship features two major parts: the ship, which has 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines. The current iteration of Starship is essentially an experimental vehicle flying forward development. With a few planned upgrades, Starship will have 3 times the thrust of Saturn V, plus the added benefit of full reusability. Starship 2 will be capable of carrying more than 100 tons to orbit, and Starship 3 will be able to lift more than 200 tons to orbit. The amount of mass we're able to launch per rocket is crucial to creating a self-sustaining city on Mars.
Now, to get a sense of how big Starship is, let's start with the average size human, which is about 2 meters high. Towering over our average human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket, with the payload fairing attached, is double the size of the Millennium Falcon, standing at 70 meters. And nearly twice the size of that is the fully integrated Starship at 121 meters tall. The ship itself is about 50 meters tall, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands about 71 meters. And even crazier, eventually the ship and booster will get even taller with future design iterations.
Can't imagine it being taller than that. Starship's first stage has a diameter of roughly 2.5 times that of Falcon 9, and with 33 much larger Raptor engines, which you can see there on your screen. Moving up the vehicle, the ship features 6 Raptors, 3 sea-level engines, and 3 vacuum engines, which are optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. The ship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface, like the surface of the moon. The ship is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable a precision landing.
To reach full reusability, ship must survive entry not just once, but over and over again. It took the teams at SpaceX about 3 years to develop the heat shield on Starship, and development for improvements is still ongoing. The ship's heat shield is composed of 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. And naturally, the tiles are designed for rapid reuse with no refurbishment between flights. As we mentioned earlier, today's Starship features a completely reworked heat shield with stronger tiles and a secondary protective layer. This promises to increase our chances of Starship making it through a controlled re-entry and hopefully a little more intact this time around. And in between our first and second stages is our hot stage, which we last saw in action on flights 2, 3, and 4. Speaking of, let's take a trip back in time and talk about that last flight. On June 6th, Starship successfully lifted off at 7:50 a.m. Central Time from Starbase, Texas, cleared the launch tower, and went on to accomplish several major milestones and firsts. As you can see there, Super Heavy booster lifted off successfully and completed a full duration ascent burn. I love the view of the sound waves there. Following separation, Super Heavy booster successfully completed its flip maneuver